Okay, I think we'll get started. If we might have some people coming on, but we can go ahead and get started. I'd like to welcome everybody. This is the September general meeting, virtual general meeting of the Hollywood Lakes Civic Association. I am Terry Cantrell, the president. As you know, before all this happened, we would meet at the Hollywood Beach Community Center on Ocean Drive, and we hope very soon we will be back to doing that. But for now, we thought there was enough time has passed since our March meeting that it was time to try to reach out to our members and Lakes residents with some format or another. We're still publishing our newsletter. Hopefully everybody that lives in the Lakes is getting the newsletter. And we can't distribute it to City Hall or anywhere else, so people that don't get the newsletter, you can read it online at hollywoodlakes.com. We have a link there that will take you directly to the latest newsletter. So feel free to keep up on what's going on via our newsletter, and we will do this again. So we're just feeling this out. It's our first time doing this. We've been holding Zoom board meetings with the board of directors, and that has gone quite well. I have participated in many city meetings as a chair for various city community civic meetings, so that has worked out well as too. So this could be the future, or this could be at least hopefully temporary for a while. We have a couple of guest speakers with us tonight. First, before I get to our code officer, I'd like to mention that our main speaker tonight is our District 1 Commissioner Caryl Shuham, who you see here on your screen. And we also have a Dr. Dan Miroff from FAU who's going to talk about flood risks and a project that he's working on that we're very much interested in here in the Lakes. But our first guest speaker is relatively new to our area. She's Code Officer Tashima Lewis. And I just want you to know that so far, Tashima is doing a wonderful job. Wonderful job. And we've gone through quite a few code officers here in the Lakes. We're not an easy area to cover. And I get nothing but rave reviews from other civic groups and other civic activists and civic associations that have had the pleasure and luck of having Tashima Lewis as their code officer. So there is one other code officer that's still that will be assigned here. I guess there's probably a new hire coming in. But from now, for this point going forward, Tashima is our main code officer for the Lakes. So Tashima, I appreciate that you come on. We're going to unmute you. And I know you have a report that you'd like to give us, so I'll give you the floor. Co-host, can you unmute Tashima Lewis?
Yes,
okay.
she's unmuted.
I'm now on mute, yes. I just wanted to come in and, of course, introduce myself. I am the newly assigned Code Compliance Officer for your area, as the president just mentioned. Typically, I am actually assigned to the north side, but as most of you are aware, that the south side is vacant right now, but I do overlap and other officers pinch in to cover the area. With COVID, most of the violations that are issued are usually generated from complaints. So they're more complaint driven than they are on views. But of course, anything that I see that's more egregious, I will address. Some of the biggest issues that I'm seeing right now in the Lakes is mostly doing landscaping. So the trees need to be trimmed back on a regular basis in the alleyways and the right-of-ways, especially with us being in hurricane season. So I'm trying to get that initiative out through contact with owners and, of course, issuing notices of violations where appropriate. As you know, we've had a lot of short-term rental violations, and myself and many other code officers have been responding not only from the ILA, but from civic leaders like yourself and the commissioner. So all of the complaints that came across my table was addressed with the violation of the emergency order. Hundreds and thousands of dollars were issued. Some of the more chronic violators receive what is called a notice to appear. And one, we're looking at license suspension. All of the fines that have not been paid yet will be scheduled for a hearing. We have an upcoming hearing scheduled for September 23rd, where the violators have the opportunity to contest it. So that is scheduled for the 23rd. I am open to take any questions that you may have. You can either, if you're unmuted, you can ask the question or you can type it in the chat. And I'm more than welcome to answer any questions from anyone that you may have.
Well, thank you, Tashima. I think we're going to limit the questions today. Myself and Commissioner Shuham do have some questions. We will be the ones asking questions. So in the future, we're going to probably collect questions for you. And then when we have you back at another meeting, that's how we'll do it. So I'll let Commissioner Shuham lead off with a question. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. First, I just want to real quick say hi to everybody here. It's great to see all these faces. I think it's a plus, Terry, not a minus. Tashima, I just want to echo what Terry just said. The compliments. I hope your ears are burning positively. Everybody in the neighborhood who has had interactions with you has been so really appreciative, and I definitely am. It was a really tough time during the emergency order where for the most part these vacation rentals were banned, and I know that we flooded you with requests. So I appreciate how hard you're working, and don't think that your work goes unnoticed. It's very much noticed and appreciated. I guess the main question I have, and I'll be candid with you, I've asked this question a few times of Mr. Chitsey, which is a few months ago, we met with Megan and John Chitsey and a few others to your point, which is what is the procedure to seek out codes in a proactive way as opposed to just responding? So is there a specific route that you follow, that you repeat once every 2 weeks, once every month? How does the proactive enforcement work for you?
Well, for me, what I do is I learn my area first. And the areas that I see that would require more of a proactive approach right now would be the area between Federal and 15th Avenue, Hollywood, and Sheridan. So it's not just looking at the properties and it needs to be in compliance with basic property standards, cleaning, painting, garbage, and so forth, but it's also what the city can do to improve certain areas like the medians and so forth. That's another issue that the residents have concerns with and maintenance of. So in fact, last week, I sent an email to Public Works to inquire about, there is an easement behind 2209 North 16th Ave. And that easement is completely high grass, there's overgrown. So basically it's an unimproved alleyway. So I wanted the city to get in there and establish something so that way it's maintained either by the city or by the abutting property owner. So certain things like that we come in contact with so we can have a working relationship with the residents and the city. But for me, I just go in, I look at the areas and see which one needs more attention. And that's what I've determined so far, is especially Federal, and then 17 Court, 17th Avenue, 16 Court, and so forth. So those areas there, I would more put my attention most, because that's the area that would need more of my active effort. And then of course, move on to the other areas that are not so dire. So some of the things I look at is right off the bat, parking issues. Sometimes people are parking on their lawn. That's a big one that we get a lot of complaints from. Make sure the property is painted, the roof or tarp, or, so things like that. Permitting issues, typically right now with COVID, that's more or less a reactive approach, because if we get a call and it's happening in the moment, then it's easier to address versus something that was done, 20 years ago. So right now I'm also having tenant landlord issues. So the tenant will call regarding, the landlord not doing this or cutting the grass. So that's another issue as well. But as far as proactive initiative, I tend to focus on the areas that I see that is more needing of that. And that's the boundary I just outlined for you.
I guess what our hope is that once you get more settled in and you have the sense of the most needy areas like you've described, that you'll eventually establish a fixed route. And so, you know, maybe it'll take you a month to cover the whole neighborhood, but just so that we know the whole neighborhood is being covered. That's what I think a lot of us are concerned, that if it's not in an area that's dire, like you described, we could have a violation that'll just be there forever until it's reported by a resident, and people, you know, that's not how it should be. So we're hoping that you can come up with a pattern of repeating visits. Maybe it'll take 2 weeks or a month to drive the whole neighborhood, and with your eagle eye, you know, you and the code department would be the ones finding these violations instead of so many having to be reported.
I agree. Right. We are in the lakes. There is a particular individual that sends in pages upon pages of complaints. So what that does, it prevents me from having the time to do more proactive initiative, because it takes one day. In fact, I had 19 complaints, right? No, even though I can get to 19 complaints in one day, it takes away from my ability to get to the other things that I can see without generating a complaint. Does that make sense? So yeah. if I'm being pulled in one direction all the time, because our policy is complaints must be taken care of. My personal goal is to get to the complaints within the same day that it's reported. So if that happened, and of course we have meetings, our supervisors calls us in, we might have a special assignment, you know, there's a variety of different things. We're working with police that would take time away from the proactive stuff. So to answer your question, I will not negate other areas of the city, of the lakes area that needs attention, because I'm not gonna put all of the time over here and then little to no time over here, but I will put more effort for the time being. So let's say, for example, I work Tuesday through Friday. I can say, well, Tuesday I'm gonna do 17 Court between, let's say, Taft and Arthur Street. Then Wednesday, I will go to the other end and come inside, and then bounce around that way. So that way it's not just isolated to the area that's needed most. Does that make sense? So I'm gonna spread myself across the entire lakes area and go from there. But the more complaints I get, that becomes the priority. And then therefore the other things are kind of left when I'm done with the complaints.
Okay, well, thank you. That's really what we're hoping, is that you can, you know, eventually get to cover the area in a repetitive way.
Definitely.
Anything else, Terry?
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I have a couple quick questions for Code Officer Lewis. Tashima, you mentioned the 9/23 hearing. Is that the first special magistrate hearing back in business? Is that what we're doing?
No, this one is special because it's going to be virtual. I just saw an email before I went live with you guys. It looks like we're going to resume normal magistrate in October. So that's just my glimpse in the email. I can confirm real quickly if you don't mind.
Oh, it's fine.
Yes, let's see here.
Yeah, while you're looking at that, I'm glad you mentioned lawn parking, because I was going to mention that, and that's a big issue for us. So, and it's not just the vacation rentals that are doing it. It seems to be permanent residents that don't realize how trashy lawn parking is to the appearance of our neighborhood. So I'm very glad that that's high on your radar, because it absolutely should be.
Right. Yes.
And the county, the vacation rental response is now, again, a lot of people had trouble using the county 311 system. I did not. I used the website, and I must have I don't know how many dozens of complaints I filed through the 311 website too. So, and you acted on every one of those. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, that's good. And from what I understand, I believe that website is still active, and we can still complain about vacation rentals using. Okay.
That's correct. Well, but the only issue, if for lack of a better word, with that is because of they removed the 24-hour requirement. The only thing that we can actually cite them for now is if we have evidence that it's more than 10 people occupying the space at one time. If
Right.
that's the case, then we can issue citations like we were doing. But so far, we haven't had that opportunity because it's been less than the 10 people that were there
Yeah,
at the
well,
property.
yeah, and I know the county guidelines now have all sorts of rather strict and rigid COVID conditions or treatments that have to be done. And there's really no way that you can check up on that. So we do know there are a lot more. There are still some rentals that are exceeding 10 or more. So we'll continue to use the website for that. So, and my last question for you is, you work with, we have an excellent sanitation code officer, Larry Pedrosa, that a lot of us know well and talk to quite frequently. Do you get involved in any of the sanitation issues? Is that mostly Larry?
Oh, I do. Yeah. So if it's a situation with an oversized pile, I can address that.
Okay. Good.
Definitely. But what has been happening, unfortunately, is that, they have been missing pickups. So that has been delaying, the process. So I wouldn't give them a violation because it's not their fault. We would then get in touch with Larry and then Waste Pro so they can circle back around and get the items removed, regardless of the size, because if you leave it there and they add to it, it's going to be oversized, but you missed it the first time. So you need to have it removed. So
Exactly.
that's what we're doing. So we're not penalizing the residents at all when we know for a fact it was missed by Waste Pro.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It's very nice to meet you, Tashima. We still haven't really met in person, and someday we will, I know. So thank you very much. You've been very, very useful to you. Wonderful presentation, and you've answered a lot of our questions. So we will see you again soon. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay, I'm going to move on to our next speaker tonight. I also like to mention, I don't know if I did intro or not, but two of our directors are helping me. Andy Ruffner and our financial secretary, Nick Moscow, are serving as co-hosts. So I thank them both for volunteering to do that. I don't have to work any of the controls. I can just be the host here. So our next guest speaker is Dr. Dan Miroff from Florida Atlantic University, who's working on a project as a grant to do some flood risk analysis. I'm going to let him tell us exactly what he's doing, and we're very interested because if he needs a neighborhood to do it, this is the neighborhood to do it, Doctor. I'll tell you that right now, right up front. So I'm sure that they will have some questions from myself and Commissioner Shuham. So Dr. Miroff, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Terry and Andy, for inviting me. I just wanted to give you a little bit of an introduction onto a project that we were awarded with the Community Foundation of Broward. And it's called the Broward Climate Resilience Stewardship. And it focuses on the ability of homeowners like yourselves to be empowered to overcome some flood risks. And at the same time, we can look at doing some energy conservation measures at the same time. So my name is Dan Miroff. I'm the Associate Chair and a Professor of Civil Engineering at Florida Atlantic University in Boca, although I have only been to my office like 3 times in the last 8 months. I also work together with the Center for Water Resiliency and Risk Reduction, and we're doing a project with FEMA and the Division of Emergency Management to do the watershed master planning for all of the basins. There's like 50 of them in the state of Florida. And what this will do is it will allow the cities and communities who are part of the community rating system, which is under the National Flood Insurance Program, to achieve a better rating score, which translates to lower flood insurance for the homeowners. So I'll talk about that in a second. And normally I teach for 3 hours, so you got to hold me down. But I have very few slides. So I want to share my screen. And hopefully it won't disappear on me. Okay, I think it's working.
Yep.
Yes, we got you.
All right, so we got this 1-year demonstration grant from the Community Foundation of Broward. And we asked for a lot more money than they gave us, of course, and they wanted to make sure that they put their money in the right place, and I totally get that. So they gave us 1 year to do this demonstration project. So we're doing a pilot. We will be selecting 2 or 3 communities in coastal Broward County to see if we can do some educational modules to improve the flood management system that is available currently, and also translate some of the other things that we're working on at FAU to helping both Broward County and perhaps in your case, the City of Hollywood, to improve the community rating score and reduce the flood insurance premium to the homeowner. And so I've already booked myself in your meeting for a couple more weeks so that I can deliver those educational modules to the homeowners, and I'll talk about the program a little bit in the next couple of slides. It's part of the Eco Broward grant program, and I'm contractually obligated to say that the support has come from the following funds within the Broward County Community Foundation. So our goal for the first year of the project is to interact with about 200 homeowners. So like I told Terry, I registered myself 50 times in this meeting to pad the numbers. But I'm so glad that there's like 50 or 60 of you here today. So I'm very excited to meet all of you at some point with my mask on and 6 feet away, of course. So the plan is to deliver these educational modules, and like I said many times already, we hope that it will translate to reducing your flood insurance, and I'll show you about how much that would be in a second, and hopefully improve some energy conservation measures either within the whole community or at the homeowner level. So we have booked for October 13 for the first module, which is your next meeting, and it's just a brief overview of how flood risk management can translate to community resilience. And then the following month, we will do a similar brief introduction about what kind of measures you can do for energy conservation and what new technologies that FAU can assist you with. So as part of our project with the center that we like to call CWR3, we did a risk probability study for Broward County, but we also did for all of the areas in Florida. And as you can see, I highlighted in blue your community. So it's in the zone AE. You must all know is high risk and 1% chance of annual flooding, which means you probably are required to have flood insurance.
You see the slide you used?
And obviously, we don't want flooding in our neighborhood, but apparently from talking with some of you earlier today and last month or so, this is happening, and this is the time of the year where it gets to be the worst. So I looked up in the recent community information system that FEMA has, and Hollywood is a class 6, which is fairly good for the state of Florida. There's quite a few communities with that class 6. So in the special flood hazard zone, which this community is in, that translates to a 20% reduction in your flood insurance premium. So annually, if the entire county of Broward was a 6, which is not, annually this would translate to about $2 million savings just for the city of Hollywood. So we can get the city of Hollywood to a class 4 by looking at some of the points that are available in the community rating system, and we can help with some of those credits. So for example, in order to get to a class 4, you need to have a watershed management plan. So we went ahead and wrote one. Many communities are afraid to tackle this responsibility. So we wrote one for Broward County, and it will take a couple cycles for it to be adopted countywide and translate to the savings. But it was a ceiling that would never be passed without it, because it's a prerequisite to have this management plan. So we went ahead and wrote one. Then there's a lot of credits that can be awarded for community education that is not done by a government entity. So it turns out FAU is not one of those, right? So we can assist by doing exactly what I'm doing right now, and that will provide more credit so we can get even a lower class, which translates to more savings on the flood insurance. So the program is the following. We give the 2 modules in the next 2 meetings. From the people who participated in both modules, you can apply to be a neighborhood resilience ambassador. And this person or persons will identify other really cool community volunteers to join them, to identify some of the projects that would measurably improve the neighborhood resiliency and the energy conservation. You'll work together with my team, which I'm going to introduce them in a second. And we can provide that basically free technical assistance. We work for you basically for the year of the project because Community Foundation of Broward is paying for us to do that. So we provide that free technical assistance. There's 3 professors plus our students that can do some of the grunt work. The persons who get selected for this program then will report out their results at the end of the project. So again, at another meeting like this, instead of me standing here at the football stadium of FAU and talking to you, you'll be talking to us. And there is a small stipend for the ambassadors that the Community Foundation of Broward will award. Of course, you can always turn around and donate it to the community to do more projects, or to the FAU to win more football games, or to me. But you can keep it as well.
Hey, look.
Hey,
Come on.
this is my son, and he wants to say hi to everybody.
Hi.
Say hi.
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 All right, I will fix your toy as soon as I'm done. How about that? Okay. So here's an example of one of the projects that we worked on. I should have locked the door, right? This is in the Pembroke Pines. So we worked on assisting the community in doing a vegetated bioswale, which is what you see in the picture. And here's the team that I mentioned before. So it's myself and Dr. Colin Polsky, who is the director of the Florida Center for Environmental Studies. He works at FAU in Davie. And Dr. Sharmeen Youssef is an assistant professor of architecture, and she specializes in building performance evaluations and energy simulations, and also flood simulation. And she is headquartered at the Fort Lauderdale campus of FAU. And so we will have the resources to be able to come and do an energy audit, for example, at a community center or a common area or an individual home. And we have some instruments and some simulations that we have available that we could help if you're interested in implementing something and you want to kind of know that it's going to work ahead of time. That's the technical assistance part that we can provide. And come to the end. So if you are interested in this idea, please join next meeting and also in November. And if you actually stay for both and you send me your interest in becoming an ambassador, you'll be able to learn valuable skills to help your own home as well as your neighbors. You'll be able to reduce the flood insurance, not only at your own home, but also community-wide. We're talking about the whole city of Hollywood. And be able to reduce your energy and water bills, perhaps, depending on what you decide you want to implement. So that's my email address right there. And I also have my business card right here, which has my cell number on it. Yeah, feel free to send me a text. And then as soon as I finish changing the diapers, I'll call you right back.
Well, thank you very much, Doctor. Very, very interesting. You know, I recognize, I believe Dr. Polsky was involved with us in the city of Hollywood a couple of years ago. You may have knowledge of that. We had well, actually, we still have it, not very active right now, but we had an ad hoc sea level rise committee, and that had met with him, and you folks were, you had put together, I think, a proposal for the city, which we didn't act on at the time, that involved looking at what we could do for our seawalls, for instance, and mitigate sea level rise. So I believe that's the same Dr. Polsky, and you
Yes.
may have knowledge of that. So it is. Yeah, that's good to know.
Yeah, we
So,
work together very closely, and obviously he's got an army of students that are close by. He'll be helping to deliver some of the material that we want to present in the next couple of meetings, and he's also going to help with coming in and implementing something if it's in his wheelhouse, right? So I'm a civil engineer, he's a geoscientist, and we have an architect. So we have the dream team.
Yeah, so it sounds like it. So I'd like to, my comment is that I believe you're probably going to be deluged with people that want to participate. I know from the lakes, especially if we get the word out that this is exactly what you want to do here too. So Commissioner Shuham, do you have any questions or comments for Dr. Meroff?
Well, I just want to thank Dr. Meroff. It's a fascinating project. I think the year is going to fly by, so I would encourage everybody to sign up if they're interested. Dr. Meroff, I too started my career as a civil engineer, so this stuff is so important to me. And I also serve on the Broward County Climate Change Task Force. So I would really encourage you to get on their agenda at one of their upcoming meetings, because they will be able to share it with all sorts of cities throughout Broward.
Is that with Jennifer Hirano?
Yes.
Okay. Yes,
Yes.
I'll contact her right away then.
Yeah, I think that, we can certainly share this information beyond Hollywood. It doesn't look like it's the kind of thing where you're going to run out of resources. It looks like the more the better. Is that right?
Yes.
Excellent. And
of course, if we do well the first year, they can give us the additional funding to expand the project, which is what we hope. So that we have to show that we can do this and demonstrate that we're worthy of their grant money, and then they will completely fund the full project that we had envisioned.
And is any neighborhood eligible, or only neighborhoods where there's a requirement to have flood insurance?
Yeah, it's coastal Broward County. So,
So does that encompass, is all of Hollywood, the whole city?
I would say that there's probably some western locations that are not coastal enough for us, but we would definitely talk to them, of course, because it's our job to be part of the community. And we work for you because FAU is funded by the state, right? Your tax dollars are at work, so we work for you. And if somebody has a question for me, I will always answer. Of course, part of the grant to be, the community that will be featured in the grant needs to be a coastal community. So originally we had several. Originally we had a couple of candidates from Hallandale and from Pompano that we're still following up with.
Yeah, I mean, the lakes is really kind of the perfect storm area for this type of project. So we would love you to consider us as your poster child. At the same time, of course, we hate that we are a poster child.
No.
But
As a poster child.
Yeah, that's the most time.
No.
Okay.
thank you so much. It sounds fascinating.
All right, Doctor, thank you again. We will, also just one more comment, we do have a general obligation bond project funded for sea level, for seawalls and other mitigation around the city-owned properties here too. So you are well aware of that too. So it can all tie into what you're trying to do here too. Again, I'd like to thank you also, and I'm sure all the viewers would also like to thank you. We're gonna continue to promote reaching out to you. So and again, I think you're going to be deluged with it. I know I'd like to get involved with you too for sure. So thank you very much. You can
my contact information in the chat in case I need to take somebody to do his bath real quick.
Okay.
And
Yeah.
then I'll come back.
Okay. Thank you very much again, Doctor. Thank you. We'll let you go now. Thank you. Okay. We're going to move on. That was really interesting. I think that's going to be something that's going to work out quite well as far as us participating, and we're right in his we're right in the area there that he needs to have subjects. So let's all get on board with it. I'm definitely going to jump on board too. So I'm going to move on to our main portion of the meeting is Commissioner Shuham. So again, we thank you, Commissioner, for coming on board. I have a number of topics. We just briefly touched on what we're going to talk about tonight. These are hot button issues that we've been dealing with. Again, those of you that receive and read the newsletter, you're pretty much well aware of what we're trying to do with some of this stuff. Most of what we're going to talk about tonight are current issues or problems that we've been dealing with. You know, our board meets every month, even though the general meeting don't take place during the summer months. We still meet as a board. 17 of us meet and discuss this stuff. And Commissioner Shuham is an excellent source of resource and help for us in dealing with these issues. So she's very well aware of these issues, and hopefully she can give us some updates, or she can give us some, you know, some suggestions on what we need to do. The first issue, again, we touched on it briefly with the code officer, and that's vacation rentals. I know there's been a lot going on. And I'm not the person that sends the 19 things a day. I promise you I'm not. I'm averaging 3 or 4 a week maybe, but not 19 a day. But anyways, probably the biggest thing that I deal with almost on a day-to-day basis on behalf of our residents here is vacation rentals. And Commissioner Shuham, I know you get just as many emails as I do, probably more, because a lot of people give up on me and they go to you and the mayor and all and city staff. So where are we at? What are we trying to do? I know that a couple of our directors on the board, especially our Vice President Tal Mazer, has been very active in this, trying to work through this. My front page article on the newsletter that just came out about a week ago, is vacation rentals and accountability of City Hall. What is City Hall actually doing to help mitigate and try to address all these problems? Because we do have an ordinance. We have an ordinance that we on the HLCA helped write in 2015 and then amended a couple of years later. So we all know that we can't outlaw them. We know that. We've been down that road. The state does not allow that. We're preempted from outlawing. We had our opportunity in 2009 and 10. We didn't act on it. One of my biggest regrets in the civic business is that we didn't do something about that then. So, but we do have an ordinance. We are allowed to regulate and try to control these vacation rentals. So can you give us an update on where we at and what the city is doing? And I know you've been doing quite a lot of work too on it. So I'll let you talk about that for a moment.
Thanks, Terry. Yeah, I think that it's safe to say vacation rentals are becoming kind of the scourge of the neighborhood, of the city for that matter. But because we're so close to the beach and because we have so many beautiful single family homes, it's impacting the lakes area, I think, worse than anywhere else in the city. But I will tell you, we're not alone. The other districts of Hollywood are having problems, and anything that I suggest or staff suggests to improve the situation is supported by the commission, I believe, as a whole. So just a little more detail, Terry, what you were saying. Although we cannot ban vacation rentals, we are allowed to regulate them, but only the exact same way that we can regulate regular homes. So we have noise ordinances, we have rules about trash and parking on the yard and things like that. Those are really the only tools that we have available to us, are the exact same rules that are applying to everybody on this call, their own homes. The way the statute, the way the city ordinance is written is that we do have a city licensing requirement, we have an inspection requirement, and we have the ability to pull a license if there are enough violations of these local rules, whether it be trash or noise. And that's been the real frustration, is that we have this ordinance in place, but since I've become a commissioner, I really don't see anyone losing their license. There is going to be, if that were to happen, I think there will be legal challenges, because although a city can enforce these regular neighborhood rules to deny a license, will basically undermine the preemption because we're not allowed to not let someone have a vacation rental in their home. So I think that there could be future challenges to taking away a license, but I don't think that should stop the city in any way from enforcing the ordinance that we have in place to the letter of the current law. We have a upcoming, what we call a legislative priority commission workshop coming up. And I believe last year vacation rentals was our #1 priority. And I am very confident it will be our #1 priority again this year. And basically what that means is during the state legislative session in January through March, the lobbyists that work for the city are given basically a shopping list of things that we care a lot about, and this will be at the top. Last year, I actually, for the first time in my life, set foot in Tallahassee to fight against even more preemptions. They were going to preclude cities from regulating these houses at all. And fortunately, at the very last minute, Governor DeSantis overrode the legislature's approval of some of these laws. So it didn't get any worse last year. I think there is a possibility things could get better for municipalities, and I say it for basically a partisan reason, that it was the South and Southeast coastal cities that have more Democratic representation up in Tallahassee, and they don't have a very strong voice as a result. But now the chronic problems with these houses have spread to areas in the north and northeast, northwest, throughout the state, where the majority Republican legislatures are elected. So I think that the support among voters for unregulated vacation rentals is really falling to the wayside. And hopefully the residents throughout the state can get a little bit more aggressive in their representation and their lobbying efforts in Tallahassee. And I'll tell you, in the hearing that I testified, there was maybe 4 residents, a few local commissioners, and sitting in the audience in very expensive suits were about 20 lobbyists on behalf of the vacation rental industry, whether it was VRBO or Airbnb or the few others. So there's a lot of money in this for those companies. They are putting a lot of manpower in Tallahassee, and it's going to take all of us together to say, the voters will not stand for this, that it's ruining our neighborhoods, and we need to get rid of that preemption and leave decisions about vacation rentals up to the cities.
Well, thank you. Yeah, as you know, I think in the city's fact sheet that we saw recently, the city alone estimates there's 1,300 vacation rentals in the city of Hollywood. As you know, we have 220 under the license that are permitted. And because we participated in drafting the ordinance, the way I read the ordinance, this ordinance gives the city the ability to not renew licenses based on X number of complaints, for instance, whether or not the city manager declares it a public nuisance. And I don't think you were on board when we successfully were able to get rid of 929 North South Lake Drive. That was a notorious vacation rental. 8 bedrooms. We called it was the mansion on the lake, and it was being rented out for not only weekend 25, 30 people vacation rental, but also parties where they were charging admission. Don't have that much anymore, thank goodness, but we still have a lot of multi people involved in this thing that are renting these out. So unless I'm not reading the ordinance right, and unless we have an ordinance that's now deemed unenforceable, which is hard for me to believe, I think there are provisions in the ordinance that would give the city and even the city manager.
Well, you broke up, so I'll jump in.
Right?
Yes, we have an ordinance, and as far as we know, it's enforceable. But I think what will happen is if enough of these licenses get pulled, I suspect these managers will get together and challenge our ordinance. But as of now, like I say, it's fully enforceable. A couple of things I want to point out is I think that there's closer to 4,000 vacation rentals in the city of Hollywood, but the ordinance only currently extends to residential zoned areas. So for example, I live on the beach. They don't need to be licensed on the beach because it's different zoning. But two things that the city staff is working on, and in large part to all of the efforts of all of the residents of the lake for constantly emailing staff and letting them know that this is a huge problem, and me constantly harassing staff and letting them know that the status quo is unacceptable. The first thing that they're doing is looking to expand the current ordinance to the absolute maximum permitted under the state preemption. So it may not be much more than we have now, but if there's anything that we haven't included in the ordinance that can make the situation better, they have their marching orders to research it and improve the ordinance for the benefit of the permanent residents. The second thing that I think will be very helpful is they are looking for a third-party company to come in and track vacation rentals. So right now, Terry, you spend a lot of time on Airbnb trying to figure out what house that is with the, you know, kidney-shaped pool and the garage door that's been sealed up, and you and Tal and other members of the board put the city on notice. Hey, I see this thing being advertised on Airbnb. I know it doesn't have a license.
Right.
It's ridiculous that you all are having to do that. And my feeling is that there are companies that will do that. They get paid a fee, but the city gets its licensing fee. So it should be a win-win for a third-party vendor to come and do that. And these third-party vendors also, in addition to tracking these properties on Airbnb and VRBO and identifying the ones that are operating illegally without a license, they also have enforcement provisions. And you can hear from Tanisha that she's spending a lot of time on vacation rentals. It's not like we've hired a whole bunch more code officers. So what that means is that she's not spending her time on illegal fences and cars parked on yards and things like that. She's spending much of her time on vacation rentals. I think that could be something better farmed out to a third party. So between improving the ordinance, which I hope will happen within the next few months, and hiring an outside vendor who has expertise in helping municipalities control the situation, I expect and hope for all of us that there'll be improvement.
That's excellent. Thank you. Yeah, I want to just say that before we move on, you know, beefing up the ordinance is wonderful, great. But I have a lot of confidence in our city attorney's staff. Now, maybe that's unfounded, but for the most part, let them sue us. I mean, come on, listen. If we have valid reason, valid cause to not renew a license, and word gets out that we're strict, that we're not going to allow these kind of things to happen, and someone wants to take us to court, let's take us to court. We have an ordinance that's passed. I mean, we have a legal ordinance. It was written. It was blessed. It was written by the city attorney's office for the most part. So, but thank you very much for that. And also, I'm very thrilled to hear we're going to go to a third-party outsourcing, because one of the biggest problems with vacation rentals is the tardiness in the city right now for inspecting this. One of the requirements of a vacation rental license is that the property must be inspected within, I think, 60 or 90 days of the issuance of the permit. That hasn't been done in over about a third of the cases. So that needs to be done too. So this company would also be able to do that, I understand. So that's good.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Briefly, I've been writing in the newsletter about the new sanitation rules, and I know you just had that on your agenda last Wednesday at second reading. We now have, based on the Waste Pros contract renewal in 2019, last fall, starting October 1st, there's going to be some changes in how the city approaches sanitation. There will be no more hard junk pickup on a weekly basis. That'll be separated out to once a month. However, we, thankfully, in the lakes, the whole city will continue to get brush pickup, yard waste pickup. That's very, very important for us too. So, but one thing that we're going to really need to start looking at, and we've been talking about this for many, many years, the city's been, quite frankly, giving everybody a break, is that if you have an alley, you need to put your brush in the alley.
Yep, you're breaking up.
Am I breaking up? You got me?
That's better. Yeah.
Okay. if you have an alley, you need to put your yard waste in the alley, not out front. And a lot of people don't have any room to put their brush in the alley because they built their fence right up to the alley pavement. So that's going to be an issue, and I think you're going to see more and more enforcement on that. We have a dedicated sanitation officer, and you're going to see the need to have a little space carved out in your alley where you can put your brush. You cannot be on the alley pavement anymore. It cannot be in the front curb either. That's what they're really going to crack down on, is a front yard or front brush. Now, for those of us, and about 30% of the city does not have an alley, understood, you have to put your brush out front, that's fine. But as far, if you have an alley, you have to put the brush in the alley, and the vast majority of the Lakes residents do have that. Is that correct? Is that how you understand it?
Yes, and the other thing is, you know, a lot of the changes were just to match the Waste Pro contract. I know a lot of people are unhappy with Waste Pro, so I just want to explain two things. The first is that Waste Pro was basically the only bidder. None of the other haul companies wanted to deal with our alleys, and you know, they're our beloved alleys. We want the trash picked up in the alleys and not in the front yard. So we kind of got you know, a little bit stuck with Waste Pro because it was just, there's no competitive bidding, and the city is not going to take trash pickup back in house. But what they did was, in order to bring the price down as best they could, and by they I mean city staff, they reduced the number of the hard junk pickup to once a month. That was the biggest cost savings. But they, like Terry said, they kept the yard waste on a weekly basis. But I think where things are really going to, you know, get tough is with code. They're going to really be strict about you only putting your yard waste out the night before the pickup. So unless you have a brush bin or area set back on your own property, so the materials are on your own property, you will start to be cited for leaving your yard waste out too long. So I think that, you know, there'll probably be a bit of a grace period, and there'll be an educational period, but that's where I think homeowners are going to see a change in enforcement. The other thing I want to mention, with all the complaints about Waste Pro and then missing areas and a million different complaints, we have a really good director of public works right now. His name is Pete Bienick, and he has basically undertaken a daily and weekly meetings with Waste Pro, and I think we're starting to see some improvement. It's going to take a while, but we're in it with them for the long haul. So I just want to assure everyone that the city staff and certainly the city commission is not satisfied with the status quo, and that people are working very hard with Waste Pro to improve the level of service.
Yeah, thank you. You know, I wrote in one of the newsletter articles, I think in June, that the city has increased their fines to Waste Pro for missed pickups, for instance, considerably since Pete came on board. So he is really trying very, very hard. And also, I have been promoting the brush bay or brush bin concept for years now, and I'm going to continue to promote that. I have brush bays on my property here. Works out very well. I have plenty of space. I'll never exceed 4 cubic yards, which is the maximum amount too. So yeah, I think that's huge. Now, one question that came up recently was, we don't have a date when or what day of the week or month that we're going to have that single monthly hard junk pickup, do we? That hasn't been established. Is that correct?
Not that I know of. You'll be the first to know.
Okay. Thank you. We'll move on. We have a couple other issues here that we want to discuss. The Broward County 911 tower issue update. I think it's important that we give the county the viewers an update on that. What can you tell us about that? Where are we at? It's supposed to go in Westlake Park. What is the latest on that?
Just a tiny bit of history. For the past many years, I'd say it's probably about 7 years, Broward County has been working to improve its communication technology for the 911 system. And even before that, the city used to have its own 911 dispatch, but Hollywood and most of the cities in Broward decided that it would be more cost efficient to let Broward County be the keeper of the 911 system. So Hollywood and most cities in Broward are a part of this system, and that's not going to change. So when the county decided to upgrade this, it was very slow about it. And finally, after the tragic shooting at Stoneman Douglas, they had to really get their act together. There was just a lot of pressure on Broward County, and they finally started to move, and they selected 16 locations for these communication towers throughout Broward, 2 of which were in Hollywood. There's a west communication tower that's already up, and the east one was going to be in Westlake Park. And that is, Westlake is a county, it's not a city park, it's a regional Broward County park. So the residents of District 1, particularly those that live in Westlake, were very much opposed to this. It seemed like a really ridiculous location in the sense that it was very much exposed to sea level rise and hurricane and all sorts of negative impact on the environment. The city proposed instead, when the whole study for the locations of these towers began, the CERC didn't exist. And when the CERC apartments and hotel were completed, the city said, hey, county, instead of ruining a regional park, why don't you put it on top of this building? To make a very, very long and painful story short, we went round and round, got involved in legal fights and everything else. And the bottom line is the county said, no way, we're not going to put it on the CERC. And then it just basically became clear that they couldn't put it in Westlake Park either, because the county charter has a provision that precludes construction in regional parks. So they were kind of stuck. And the county went through all sorts of machinations about trying to swap land with other cities and all these different crazy things to try to get it in Westlake Park. And at where it stands right now is it does not appear to be a current concern that this tower will go in Westlake. It looks like the county is abandoning that idea. But nevertheless, we need a 16th tower. And that 16th tower is important not only for the county emergency system as a whole, but it's important for our police and our fire department as well. So we have to find a place for it. The county has refused to really pursue the CERC. And right now it looks like it's going to be, or at least discussions are getting very serious against my position. It does not support it, but I think that it will get support from the rest of the commission for the Echo Golf Course around the second hole. And so that's where it stands now. I think Westlake is out, but Echo around the second hole, they're going to carve out a little piece of the golf course, and that's the most likely scenario at this point.
Yeah, you know, if you look at that on a map and you Google map that, there's not a lot of difference in the distance between the original place and the second hole of the golf course. I know the golf course well. I play it. If you look at that on a map, I mean, there ain't gonna be a whole lot of difference in that. I know those people at Westlake Park, I'm sure they're not thrilled about the second hole of the golf course. And it pushes a little closer to the people that are to the west from 14th Avenue West in the Lakes neighborhood. So, you know, again.
Although because it's city property, it's not bound by other restrictions that would prohibit the tower from being less than 400 feet from someone's home. But notwithstanding the fact that it's not bound by that, it will be greater than 400 feet from any home.
Okay. Again, I think we all are still baffled why the CERC wasn't really a good option. I have a lot of experience in those radio towers from my business, and there's no reason why they really couldn't have been on top of the CERC, you know, building at all. And quite frankly, I don't really know. And I mean, if they designed a system for 16 towers and we need the 16th tower, they know better than I do, that's for sure. But there really is there's not that many areas along the beach and in Hollandale Beach either that don't have good coverage. So there surely could have been a relay system or something else better to come up. But again, like I said, we're not the experts. We have to go with what they want. So.
And I'm not an expert. The only thing I will say, Terry, is that the city commission and the city staff have fought really, really hard to keep this out of a residential area. But at this point, I'm just being candid. I think that things are starting to slide a little bit towards Echo.
Okay. All right, thank you. Well, we'll deal with that hopefully when time comes up. Next on the agenda that I want to discuss was anything update on flooding mitigation. You know that, of course, everybody still has in their memory the December 22nd, I believe, or 23rd, the great flood of 2019, as I called it in my article in the newsletter. And I know that resulted in quite a few changes. I know that at the time, our relatively new director of utilities, Vivek Yalav, was very, very responsive as best he could. He was trying to get a handle on his job. And we now have some improvements made. I know there's been some improvements made to the individual pump house. I believe there's 14 pump houses in the city. The majority of those are in the Lakes neighborhood, of course, 8 or 9 of them. We now have the phone numbers placed on the outside of the buildings. So if people see during a rain event or a flood event that the pumps don't appear to be working, there's a phone number we can call now. There's no question about that. I do remember, though, there was a company that the city contracted with called Tetra Tech that was going to put together an analysis of the city, and you and I participated in a walkthrough in January on that with a couple of the locations. So have you heard anything more? I thought it was supposed to be ready by the summer. Have you heard anything more about Tetra Tech?
I don't think it's finished yet. I don't know if Vivek is on the phone, but if he is, I just want to give him a huge shout out. It has been night and day since Vivek started with the city. He's been completely proactive, trying to help the lakes as much as he possibly can. And the thing I think that has really just turned things around, Terry, before we get to that survey, is he has come up with a very detailed protocol when a major storm approaches. So he's not waiting to send out crews on an emergency basis when a pump fails. He's checking everything before the storm. He's working with the residents, and he, like I said, has a detailed protocol that he's following, and it really, that alone has made a big difference. He's also worked to do checks of all the valves and drains and the system as it stands today to make sure things are in the best working order they can be, and they've done a lot of repairs. And what you're talking about is a long-term study to see what else can be done to keep water out of the lakes in storm and high tide situations. So the company that we met with, I honestly don't know how far along it is, but it's something that Vivek and his department will use for long-term planning of improvements in the lakes and throughout the city. But obviously we're a hot spot.
Yeah, you know, that's true. I got an email prior to the meeting from a resident on Tyler Street asking about what is expected sea level rise to be in 35 years. I'm going to try to get that information from maybe Dr. Miroff can help us with that. But again, I think everybody got caught off guard. I know Vivek's group did, we did. And that was a lot of rain in a very short period of time. But you know, getting back to the stormwater drain issue, or to the yard waste issue, a lot of that flooding is caused from brush floating down from people's brush piles out front of their houses into the storm drains. I know at the corner of 8th Avenue and Harrison here, my neighbors and I, we spend more time raking loose brush off of those storm drain grates, so the water can go down. So I think that aspect of the new Waste Pro yard waste collection issue is going to help this flooding issue too. So, and the other thing too, I know that I think Vivek is on the call, but we get some complaints now during that flooding event. Some of the flooding occurred because with a couple weeks prior to that date, Vivek's crews had removed some of the portable pumps from around the lakes in different spots that had been up during the hurricane season. Hurricane season was over, December 23rd, wasn't needed. Well, now they're back, and Vivek and I discussed it. They're going to be back. They're going to be back permanently, and which is fine, I'm sure, with the lakes neighborhood. However, they're not real attractive. So Vivek, if you're listening, I don't know if we can put some temporary shields up or something around some of those pumps on North and South Lake. It would make some of the residents happy too. So, including my wife.
Terry,
Okay.
I'll just mention that VVEC is also working with FDOT for some of the low-lying and flood-prone areas on A1A. And the FDOT gave a fantastic presentation that the VVEC worked with them on the other day. And they are talking about some, along A1A, installing some of kind of these prefab encased kind of pump stations. So we can maybe in a little while see what those look like. And it may be that it's appropriate to do something like that around the lakes as well.
Great, thank you. All right, let's move on. A couple more items here. I think we're doing good on time. I really appreciate that you're helping us here with our very first meeting, Commissioner. I know you have probably one of the biggest hot button issues right now is the lakes anchoring issue. I finally call it the squatter problem. I think the last count, North Lake, we had 39 or 40. We were up to 50 at one point. Now there's about 9 or 10 on South Lake as well. So somewhere between 40 and 60 on an average boats, many of which I happened to go out on a friend's boat a couple weeks ago, and we took a little tour of North Lake, and the vast majority of them either look vacant, empty, or abandoned. There aren't that many really that look like they're lived on. The people are living full time. They're commuting to their works and their shopping and all that via dinghies that are haphazardly docked against the rocks and on the tying up space by the ramps on the marina area. So you have a workshop coming up. Can you tell us something about the workshop?
So similar in a way to the vacation rentals, we have ordinances in place that govern the lakes, but there's been major preemptions of what cities can do by the state of Florida. And one of the worst is basically in waterways, boats can anchor. So people living on boats there is really something that the city can't do much about, but what it can do is it can cite these boats for various violations, whether they don't have proper pump out. I'm not a boater, so I'm not sure I'm using all the right terms, but navigability lights and things like that. What we can address are what are referred to as derelict boats. And these boats have to be non-navigable. They really have to be kind of a wreck. It's a high standard. And I think that there are some of these boats out there right now. And, I do work with several residents who are really completely on top of this, as well as the police department, to follow what's a very detailed and lengthy set of rules before you can get these boats towed. It's like a 45-day notice. You have to make efforts to locate the owners of these boats. It's just kind of a long, complicated process. So while of course, the city could be doing a better job of controlling the boats on these lakes, its hands are somewhat tied. So the purpose of the workshop is to investigate through the city attorney's office, how can we improve these ordinances? And we're very fortunate to have a lot of residents who live on or around the lakes that are really vested in this issue. We actually have a couple of residents that have worked with an expert from University of Miami and have put together a series of suggestions for changes to the ordinance that will help the city control these boats. And the city attorney's office is reviewing those now, and I expect and will be demanding that by that workshop on the 14th that we'll have all the input back from the city attorney's office on these ordinances. So that's the gist of it, is what more can and should the city be doing to ensure all of us that the people that are on the lakes, on their boats, are there lawfully and safely and are not putting our residents at risk.
Yeah, for the record, we did have a joint meeting planned on March 19th that we unfortunately had to cancel. That would have been, would give everybody an opportunity. We had a meeting in 2019 too, and I know that out of that meeting came the firm declaration that the vast majority of the people that live around the lakes do not want mooring fields. So are we doing anything with the mooring? I mean, are we spending the grant money yet for the mooring? I know there was some grant money that the city was going for. Do you know anything? Is there an update about the grant money for the mooring field?
So the grant, you don't have to use the grant. The city has the opportunity to have access to grant funds. What I would like personally to see is that some amount of those grant monies be used to explore what is actually going on in the lakes. Referring back to some of these experts that I've been talking with, the depth of the lakes in so many locations is so shallow that we think that these boats will not be legally permitted to be where they are, just based on having nothing other than the information as to how deep the lake is. You know, there's all sorts of environmental regulations and restrictions. So I'm hoping that the first step will be to do a detailed hydro survey of the lakes and an environmental survey of the lakes. And based on the results of those, I think a lot of areas where we see these boats anchored now will be off limits. Then, you know, we'll see what's left. Like, where are these boats allowed to anchor? Is it still going to be a problem for us? And, you know, we don't have to put in the mooring fields, but if down the road, the residents and the city staff think that, you know, we've tried everything else and nothing's working, that mooring field is still be an option for us.
So at the workshop, though, you mentioned experts. Are experts participating in your workshop? Is that something that you're going to have at the workshop?
I don't know yet. I suspect it will be primarily the Parks Department, the Marina folks, and the City Attorney's Office. But they'll have the opportunity before the workshop to talk to these to the various experts.
So as I understand how workshops really, I've sat in on many workshops back when we could come to City Hall. Workshops are public. The public does not participate or cannot participate in workshops. Is that typically how this works?
Yes, but thanks to very vested residents who have spent a lot of time on this issue, there is a collection of questions that I have received. If anybody has any questions about it, they can feel free to send them to me, and I will get the answers either before the workshop or we'll raise them during the workshop. Most of the ones I've received so far, which is pretty lengthy, I'm hoping to have answers to them prior to the workshop.
Okay, great, thank you. And one last comment on it. I do know for a fact that we did, the city did a study back in 2005 on dredging North Lake, because North Lake is extremely shallow. There's a large coral dome that's goes right up the spine of North Lake, and the only part that was ever dredged out was right by the marina, so big boats can get in there. So South Lake is much deeper than that. So yeah, and so what you just said about using the grant money for some sort of hydro study, aqua study of the bottom of the lake. And there's Johnson seagrass, which I understand is protected in North Lake. And
part of it
yeah.
Also, all the environmental protections. There's some fire coral in there. There's all sorts of things. But, and I think even South Lake in the intervening 15 years is probably not as deep as it once was.
Yeah, and you can see the, just from the silt and all that builds up. Yeah, I guess you're right.
Exactly.
And you can see that we have photographs of some of the sailboats with keels and all that are tilted on the side during low tide. So you know that these boats are in super shallow water, as it turns out.
Exactly. The only other thing I wanted to mention is that, the city does not have an unlimited budget, and it is expensive to pull these boats. And the only money that the city has to pull the boats, once they cross, satisfy every hurdle to legally be able to pull them, it's through grant money. And we get about $50,000 a year through the police department, and there is ample money there right now. So I just want to let everybody know it's not a question, although it is expensive to pull them, it's much more the restrictions on being able legally to pull them.
Yeah. I hope that soon, especially after the workshop, there may be some way to hold a conference call or maybe some kind of meeting where you can bring everybody up to speed, all the people that have been very active in this.
I think that's a great idea. We'll try to do the meeting that got canceled.
We'll try to reschedule that March 19th meeting that we didn't have. So,
yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on. We have a couple more issues here. One of the, there's a county ballot item. I probably should have backed up on this one. When you're talking about the 911 tower, the county had 2 ballot questions that they were going to put on, and I understand they dropped one of those, but the one ballot question was to allow the county to put radio towers in any of their parks, which would basically be removing the covenants that they have in place. And I believe they dropped that one from the ballot. But the second one was the county would have the ability to override any local municipality zoning codes to do whatever they wanted on county-owned property. Is that still on the ballot?
It's not quite that broad. Basically, if everybody remembers, in 2018, we passed a county surtax. It was called the penny tax, and those funds are going to be used for transportation projects. And I think in part because of what happened at Westlake, the county said, wait a minute, if we're going to use the surtax money to do transportation projects, and the easiest example is like a park and ride lot, something like that. Those park and ride lots are going to be located in individual cities, but they're going to benefit the residents of the county as a whole. And we, the county commission, we basically don't want to deal with individual city municipal regulations. And so what's going to be on the ballot, and I personally, I won't be supporting it. But basically what it does is it allows, after some deliberation, for the county to override, the county rules override any municipal regulations on the construction. So, the county, I get it. They don't want to have these projects delayed, but, we all live in cities and we want these projects to be within the requirements of our own city ordinances. So it's a little bit of a tug of war there, and the way they decided to resolve it, instead of working individually with each city, was take it to the voters and ask the voters, hey, for these regional transportation projects that you residents are paying for through your surtax, do you want the county to be able to proceed unimpeded without having to follow municipal regulations?
So, but isn't that taking away our home rule, just like the state did with the vacation rental thing? I mean,
Exactly.
the city can't possibly support it.
It's like a county preemption.
Well, I say we oppose it. I mean, are you advocating support or opposition?
No, I personally I certainly would not be supporting it myself. No, I think that, the city has lost so much of its ability for home rule that we have to really fight every which way. I mean, we all are paying the price every day on vacation rentals and boats anchored in our lakes. And this will be just another thing. And just because it's the county versus the state doesn't make it any better.
Okay, thank you. Good, that's good. So, we're going to go on a campaign of opposition. A couple more
Terry,
issues.
I just want to say real quick, because I didn't point it out because I felt like I was county bashing a little bit, which I don't like to do, but it was pretty crazy. They were going to have us vote whether we would allow construction in regional parks, but I think even the county commission realized that's a bridge too far. So they've taken that one off of the November ballot.
Okay, well, we'll give the county some credit for that. That's about it. So, all right. Speaking of the lakes, we've been having a lot of issues with Holland Park and the marina, the Hollywood Marina ramps, and what seems to be now another commercial intrusion by people wanting to rent, people renting jet skis and now pontoon boats in Holland Park and the Hollywood Marina ramps and tying those up. I thought we were going to enforce that. Apparently, we're not. What can you tell us about that problem?
So it's illegal commercial activity in city parks, and basically what's happening for people on the call like me who don't use jet skis. If you have a jet ski that you own, you can take it to the boat ramps and ride your jet ski. But what's happening now with the telephone apps like Uber is basically you can go on your phone and rent a jet ski and meet a dealer at a city park, and they will deliver a jet ski or a pontoon boat or a paddleboard for that matter right to you. And that is illegal because basically they are doing business in a city park. And so it's not a new issue. It was really bad at the beginning, at the beginning of spring, but then COVID hit and things seemed to quiet down a little bit. We had a great enforcement over the 4th of July. The city has put signs up. Their rangers are absolutely authorized to enforce this. So I'm not sure why it was so bad over Labor Day. but I've got a bunch of emails out there to confirm with staff and HPD that this is absolutely something that will be enforced. I know over 4th of July, if they saw a trailer with 2 of these, they checked to make sure they were registered to the people that, that the vehicle or the vessel was registered to people that were using them. So for some reason, it may just be that over Labor Day, the rangers that were there weren't trained properly. I don't know the answer yet, Terry, but it's unacceptable. And I know staff will address it.
Absolutely. Just one quick thing back to the sea level rise and the general obligation bond. In the GOB, there is, I think it's $13 or $14 million for seawalls seawall improvements to the areas that are city owned, as you know. And as chair of the GOB advisory committee, I can report that I believe the city has hired the consultant. They went out to bid and they got bids on the engineering firm to do the consulting, to figure out where these are going to go, how big and high that they have to be. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe you informed me not that long ago that the county has a zoning regulation coming forward that's going to begin January 1st about how high seawalls have to be now. Can you refresh my memory on that?
Yeah, so Broward County is going to be imposing a requirement on private property. Like you said, the GOB money is for the city property, but for those folks that live on the lakes, there's a certain standard that will be imposed, like if water is coming onto your property at certain times, whatever, it'll all be described in this county requirement. Then you, the property owner, will be required to install a seawall. And I don't have the legislative language in front of me. There was some deliberation over the height of the wall, and I think that they'll be phasing it in at one height, and then in so many years it will have to be at a higher height. So the homeowners will have to decide how they choose to handle that. So absolutely, that's coming. Yeah. And the other thing, Terry, I wanted to mention as far as where the sea level rise will be in 35 years, there is a South Florida compact of 4 counties, Monroe, Palm Beach, Broward, and Miami-Dade. And that compact has come out with sea level rise projections. And I think if you go to that website, you'll be able to see, or at least if you want, I'm happy to share with residents that website. It's pretty amazing.
Right. Excellent. Thank you. And the last issue that I have to discuss, and I don't know if I gave you a heads up on this or not, but the title of my my article on the front page of the recent newsletter was mention the word accountability. And we on our board, we've been talking a lot lately about accountability. And accountability really is something that I think that I know residents and taxpayers expect when we deal with city and city hall. And because I'm so vastly interested in what goes on at city commission meetings, I watch most of your meetings when I'm in my office here, and I don't get much sun those days. But I noticed too that you and the other commissioners seem to share similar issues that we residents and civic activists do in regard to getting something done and getting issues handled at City Hall. And I'll just give you two case in points. 4 or 5 months ago, a car ran over both of the traffic circles on Johnson Street between 14th Avenue and 17th Avenue. As of today, both of those traffic circle repairs have not been made. Reflective signage has not been put back up. It's still laying in the middle of the traffic circles. It's been reported to the city way back when it happened. I believe it was April or May, and now it's September. When the city, another case in point, I'll just give you 2. There's plenty of them. When FDOT completed the bikeway project that went around from 14th Avenue, from Sharon Street all the way through our city, they very nicely repaved the walkway along 14th Avenue and Polk Street. However, now we have flooding on the walkway on Polk Street. And I know you've received some emails about that. I've been on some of those emails as well. Nothing has been done about that. And it's been, what, 2.5, 3 months now. It's a rainy season. And if you wanted to walk your stroller after a rainstorm along Poultry, you could not do it on that road because it floods out too. So at what point does the city responsiveness and accountability come into play? I mean, what can we as residents and civic activists do to get more response from the city? I mean, where is it start at the top? Start with the city manager. I mean, you help us all you can, but I hear your frustration every now and then too, let's face it. And I hear it from the dais from other commissioners that asked for an update on something 5 months ago that never got the update, and they're asking for it again and again and again. So I don't mean to put you on a spot, and I know this wasn't planned, but I just thought it would be important. So.
There's a lot of issues like this. And, you know, for me, it's definitely a learning curve on how best to handle these. Just something simple that I've started to do is basically for myself, I'm keeping a matrix of every issue and what's the last email, and setting a trigger for myself, you know, and I don't think I should have to do that, but I've learned that I have to do that. And I am not making excuses for staff, but, you know, they have a million of these issues. And so I think they're trying to prioritize. And obviously, when you're the one that's impacted by pushing a stroller in the rain, their prioritization is not working for you. So I will say that to any resident in District 1, or the city for that matter, because I get emails from other districts as well, that's my job, is to be your voice. If you are frustrated with something, you let me know, and if I drop the ball, let me know again and again. On the two issues that you mentioned, I'm aware of both, and I'll tell you what I know. On the Johnson Street circles, there was a research going on as to whether they could install solar lighting. And it, you know, once you start with the idea of research and trying to do something new and better, it slows down a resolution. So I don't understand in the interim why the reflective lighting is just not put back and let these other options continue in parallel, and I'll inquire. But I think honestly, Terry, what's happening is whenever they put it back, it gets knocked over again. It's not a workable long-term solution. So that's Pete Bienick. He's definitely aware of it. On the flooding at 14th and Polk, it's my understanding that FDOT has done their job. And in order for there to be a further fix, which it clearly needs, it will necessitate some regrading on the golf course. So as part of the design package that will be let for improvements to the golf course, that regrading of that area will be included. And so it is on everyone's radar that it needs to be addressed, but they're not going to address it with a short-term fix when there's a long-term solution coming.
Okay, well, I guess it is what it is. That's kind of a shame. I mean, I didn't know if there's any way to berm that area off to keep the water coming, but and speaking of that, of the golf course, the RFP for the work has now been officially let out. I think it's due on October 1st. So we're finally making progress on that after a 6-month delay in that too. So that's another good GOB issue that's going to help us here in the lake.
Yeah, I'll say about that, you know, whenever things gets kind of screwed up, there's usually a silver lining. And I think clearly in this case there is, that the work should have been let in 2 separate packages as it is now. And I think the result will be we'll end up with a much better product.
And we also now have the National Golf Foundation as well as the USGA involved. The National Golf Foundation attended our GOB Advisory Committee last week, our virtual meeting last week, and gave us a little presentation. So they're acting as consultants in every step of the process. So they're going to be actively involved, and I think that's probably right. That is a silver lining for sure. So.
Yeah.
That's all I have. If you have any closing comments, I think we did good. It's about the time we would end our public meeting at the beach anyway. So the only difference is we didn't have coffee and donuts, but other than that, it's not too bad. So any closing comments? Yeah.
I want to just express my thank you to you, Terry, and your board for the insane amount of work that you do. I mean, I am about as busy as I can be as a commissioner, and you guys are just so incredibly helpful. So just a very heartfelt thank you for all that the board does and all the residents do for that matter. If you guys don't complain, we can't fix it. So please never hesitate to email me. Email is by far the best way to communicate because it allows me to simply forward to the appropriate staff members. But just don't get frustrated until you reach out. And just to understand, I think staff is extraordinarily busy, but we are not going to let them use COVID as an excuse. But it did take a lot of city resources to get us through this very difficult time. So, and I also just want to say a mazel tov to Andy. I just heard the exciting news. So congratulations to you.
Okay, well, thank you very much. And yeah, thank you very much. And again, thank you for everybody that attended, and thank you to my very excellent, hardworking board that I'm very, very honored to have working with us here too. And Andy and Nick for doing a great job, and Dr. Miroff, thank you very much. You're going to hear from a lot of us. I'm sure about that too. So, all right, everybody, I think we're done for tonight. Good night, and we'll do this again soon. We'll figure out when. Thank you, everybody. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.